I'm gonna look into the future, search the meta. Looking in the future, guys, that's hard work. Oh, I see it. I see it. Hello fellow brawlers, I'm KairosTime and it is time to brawl. Today we're going to be taking a look at the meta and doing a meta prediction video based off of the recent balance changes. Hope you enjoy the video, guys. Okay, now I'm going to start this out with telling you guys that this video is different than the brawler tier list that I'm still going to do. That's going to be released sometime next week once the pros have had a chance to really jump into the meta and determine which brawlers are the best and which are the worst for every single game mode in the game. So make sure you hit the subscribe button if you haven't already so that you are the first to see it. This video is going to be taking an in-depth look at the recent balance changes, talk about exactly the different interactions that are going to happen because of these changes, and on top of that, with each brawler, I'm going to do a prediction on how those changes are going to influence the meta. Before we get started, I did want to give a quick shout out to some top players who did help me solidify some of my thoughts and opinions for the meta, namely Corey, Real Canadian, Death Star, Crowdu, It's the U Day, The Secret, Portal, and Shadow Jutsu, also known as Brawl Boy on YouTube. Okay guys, let's go ahead and start off by talking about Colt. Colt receives a decreased super range from 13.33 tiles down to 11 tiles. Now this is going to influence a little bit, but honestly I still think he's going to be a great option. The two modes where this really influences him are in Heist mainly, and then Brawl Ball where he ranked S tier on the last tier list. Honestly though, I think that it's going to influence him on Heist more than Brawl Ball because he's definitely being used at this point to try and break through walls, get right to the middle of the safe and opening that up so that Bulls and Daryls can just charge right in and deal a ton of damage onto that safe. Other than Heist, I think that it's a really slight nerf to Colt and it may make him slightly less viable, but still he's a strong option on a lot of maps and a lot of game modes where he was strong before. I don't think he's going to be replaced by any brawlers very easily. Up next we have Dynamike with a nerf to his damage from 800 down to 760 base damage. Now this is base damage. With a maxed Dynamike, that means that now he's going to be doing 2,128 damage if both his dynamite sticks land on an enemy brawler. Still quite a bit, but I think that this is going to place Dynamike exactly where he needs to go. Before the update, he could take out 2/3 of all of the brawlers in 2 shots if both dynamite sticks landed on them. This is more damage output than 2 Colt attacks landing every single bullet on a brawler. After the update, he requires 1 more shot to land perfectly in order to take out Jessie, Penny, and Tara. A perfect hit is when both dynamites actually deal damage, but on top of that, 10 out of the 21 brawlers are now going to require 1 more dynamite stick to hit them in order to be taken out. So even though it's only a 5% nerf to his damage output, it's going to influence his interactions with a lot of brawlers, and this is going to definitely put him into a good situation where it's a little bit more of a difficult decision to choose between Barley, who does a better job at controlling a wider area, and Dynamike, who just does a little bit more damage. I still think that he's going to be a solid choice on maps that are specifically good for throwers like Dynamike and Barley, but there may be some instances where Barley is still the better choice. Next we have Ricochet, who received a decrease in his attack range from 10 tiles down to 9.67 tiles, and then a decreased range from the boost to his bounce from 2 tiles down to 1.67 tiles. That's a 3% nerf to his regular attack and a 17% nerf to those bounce boosts. Now honestly, this decrease in range may not seem like a huge nerf because we're talking about 1/3 of a tile, but where it really hits Rico hard is when it comes to the boost from bouncing those shots. The bounce boost is going from 2 tiles down to 1.67 tiles per bounce, and with 5 bounces available to actually give that boost, his total range is decreasing almost 2 entire tiles. Now 2 tiles may not seem like a lot when you're bouncing all those shots off and stuff, but one important factor to realize is the fact that the decrease in those boosts will actually make it harder for Rico's shots to actually hit that last bounce. So in a lot of circumstances where Rico is actually bouncing those shots off the walls, it may actually become a nerf that's closer up to 4 tiles instead of 2. I'm going to look into the future, search the meta, see what's up. Oh, I see it. I see it. Yeah, my meta prediction is that he's still going to be a great option on maps that have a lot of walls that he can really bounce off and things like that, especially like Bone Box. But I do think he's going to be stepping back on a lot of other maps to make room for some more tankier and short-range brawlers. And on top of that, I think that that 3rd spot in Bounty with that Brock Piper Ricochet combo, I think that we're going to start seeing Ricochet be replaced with other brawlers, especially on those maps that really don't have a lot of walls and were really opened up. There's a reason why Ricochet was being banned on every single match, on every single map in the YouTuber tournament, guys. There was just really no way to counter a Ricochet without another Ricochet, unless you just happen to outskill them. Okay, now we have Bo, who is increasing his main attack damage from 400 up to 420. This is a 5% buff, and because of that, he is now able to take out Bull, Daryl, and Pam with one less arrow than he did before he was buffed. Now, honestly, this is not a huge change in 1v1 interactions, but I do think it's going to make Bo shine a little bit more on maps that aren't so grassy. In conjunction with the nerfs to Colt, Rico, and Dynamike, I think that Bo is going to see a little bit more action as a B to A tier gem carrier on gem grab, as well as having a good solid option for duo showdown and regular showdown. Once again, I'm going to look into the future of the meta. Looking at the future, guys, that's hard work. But you're never gonna guess what I saw. That's right, I saw Bo in Bounty, replacing Rico on a lot of maps, guys. Honestly though, I think that he is going to be a good option in Bounty because he's kind of a good mix between being a little mini tank and having some good strong DPS as well, and keeping back brawlers like Piper and Brock. Most of the brawlers that are popular in Bounty get taken out by Piper in 2 shots and get taken out by Brock in 3 shots, but Bo is a little bit tankier. It takes 3 shots from Piper at max range to take him out, and 4 shots from a Brock to get taken out. With his increase in DPS, I think that he may be a solid option. Okay guys, now we have Poco, who received an increase in attack range from 6.33 tiles up to 7 tiles, and an increase in projectile speed by 28%, and his super projectile speed is being increased by 92%. Holy cow, guys, these buffs have made Poco feel like the incredible Frank in comparison to his weaker pre-buff self. Frank Smash! Now, I will be honest, I think that people are kind of overhyping him as the #1 gem carrier over Pam at the moment. I think a lot of people are just kind of underestimating Poco at this point because he was just so easy to avoid beforehand, and once people get a little bit more practice against him, they'll learn how to keep their distance and what they can get away with and what they cannot get away with when they're playing against a Poco. Once people start playing around him quite like that, I don't think that he's going to be nearly as OP as people are overhyping him to be. Still, Poco's buff has definitely brought him into a strong place. With the right comp, he's definitely going to do very well against other Pams in gem grab. I think it's going to come down to how much skill you have, as well as which brawlers you're playing with on top of that. Typically, Poco does really well when he's playing with tankier brawlers because of his ability to burst heal those brawlers, and now from a distance. But Pam does a better job playing with brawlers that do a little bit more damage because of her ability to consistently keep them healed up. There definitely are some brawlers that work well with both Pam and Poco, but I'm really excited to see the meta kind of shift and show kind of how Poco comps and Pam comps are going to try and like counter each other. I think it's going to be really fun and exciting. On top of gem grab, I think Poco is going to have a more competitive place in showdown and duo showdown as well. In showdown, his super doesn't add any really threatening value, and so you're very likely to team up with a Poco because even though he does have some pretty good burst damage, he still has the lowest DPS out of any brawler in the game. And in duo showdown, he just does such a good job at keeping his friendly brawler alive, especially now that Double Trouble is not the only duo showdown map. Okay guys, let's go ahead and talk about Mortis. Mortis received a movement speed from 770 up to 820, which is a 6% buff. This officially makes Mortis the fastest brawler paired up with Crow. In Brawl Ball, Mortis was an S tier ball carrier in the hands of the pros, and an F tier ball carrier if you just didn't know how to play with it. With his speed buff, I think it's going to make it much easier for more players to be able to play him well in Brawl Ball, especially for those that are new to Mortis. And you better get ready if you're in the top part of the ladder, where you're going to see a lot more Mortises than you did before. Now, not only in Brawl Ball, but in some gem grab maps where throwers are really prevalent, Mortis actually did have a very slight ability to do well, not as a gem carrier, but as an aggro brawler whose whole goal is to try and take down those weaker, squishier thrower brawlers in the back. With his additional speed, I think that we're going to start seeing Mortis in some gem grab maps on top of that. Now once again, he should not be played as a gem carrier, because if you do that, you're relying on your teammates to try and push 3 enemies back, and that does not work out. Instead, what you need to do, you've got to go on the offense offense, you gotta go onto the enemy side, you gotta harass them back there, and try and take out as many squishy brawlers as you can so that your team can handle the gems. Then, once you have enough gems on the ground, you take Mortis, you come back, you grab those last few gems in the gem mine, and then you run away, and that's how you play well with Mortis in gem grab. Overall, this buff to Mortis is going to make him a bit better where he was already good, but hopefully shouldn't make him too strong, and I don't think we're going to start seeing him in maps where he wasn't good beforehand. Okay guys, now we're going to talk about El Primo, who received 2 buffs. First, an increase in his health from 5600 to 5800. This brings him up to 8120 health at max level, and then an increase in main attack damage from 340 to 360, which is a 6% buff to his attack damage. With his attack buff, El Primo can now take out every single brawler in 1 less hit than before his buff. And when I say 1 less hit, I'm talking about 1 punch, and each attack is 4 punches. With that being said, there is 2 exceptions, and that is to other El Primos and to Franks, because they did get HP buffs in this most recent balance change. On top of that, if he lands all 4 punches, he can now 2-shot Brock, Colt, and Dynamike, as well as 3-shot Pam. On top of that, with his health buff, El Primo can now survive 1 more shot from Mortis, Penny, Poco, and Spike. Now these changes to El Primo actually sound like a really decent buff to El Primo, and these 1v1 interactions with other brawlers really would suggest that El Primo is going to be much stronger now than he was before. However, the problem with El Primo before wasn't the fact that he couldn't deal enough damage, or the fact that he didn't survive long enough. The problem with El Primo was the fact that his short range made it nearly impossible for him to get close enough to skilled players, no matter which brawler they were playing. Because of that, at the competitive level, I don't think that El Primo is going to really become more usable in basically anywhere other than maybe Brawl Ball, where he was already doing okay. And even then, the increase in frequency of Shelly to try and counter other Mortises and also El Primos is going to make it really difficult for him to thrive even in Brawl Ball. Now my guess is that Supercell is really hesitant to buff him to the point where he's competitive at the top of the ladder, because then he would really wreck new players that don't know how to keep him away. So my suggestion would be to change his star power, since that's the best way to make him viable in competitive gameplay while not affecting the lower part of the ladder. My suggestion exactly would be to switch out his current star power with one that would make it easier for him to get close up to other brawlers. Specifically, to make it so that his super would actually passively charge over a period of time without him actually having to deal damage. Now I would not want it to be anything too overpowered. It would probably be something really small, like maybe 1 free super every 2 minutes. Ideally, this really small change would actually give him a fighting chance to really help him turn the tide against long-range brawlers who really just shoot him down before he can get anywhere close to them. Okay guys, now let's go ahead and talk about Frank. He received the same increase to his health that El Primo did, making him the tankiest brawler paired up with El Primo as well, and he's receiving an increase in his attack range from 5 tiles to 5.67 tiles, which is a 13% buff to Frank's attack. Once again, with Frank getting the same health buff as El Primo, Frank can survive 1 more shot from a Mortis, a Penny, a Poco, and a Spike. Now this looks like a really great buff to Frank, honestly. His survivability helps him survive a little bit longer, but the fact that his range is increased by 13% is really what makes Frank feel more usable. Beforehand, Frank was best used to push in Brawl Ball, and now that his range is being increased, I think he's going to be a very solid option in Brawl Ball, despite him being the hardest brawler to push according to Yump and Bob Marley, top 2 Frank players in the world. Now he does still get hard countered by Shellys and other shotgunners, but I think this is going to make him a little bit easier for him to use. On top of that, there are certain maps in Gem Grab, like Hard Rock Mine with lots of bushes, that he was able to be played successfully, and I think it's going to be easier for him to actually play there now as well. In the previous meta, you see a Frank and you kind of just want to go up and give him a hug, right? You're Shelly, you're like, hey, I can handle Frank. You just get up as close as you possibly can and you blast him with your shotgun. I guess that's not really the same thing as a hug, but you get the idea. Now, if you see a Frank, I think you're going to be a lot more likely to try and keep your distance away from him because of that extra range added to his attack. Last brawler to receive a buff is Penny. She is receiving increased projectile speed from her cannon by 25% and a decrease in her cannon's reload time from 3 seconds down to 2.5 seconds, which is a 17% buff. These are huge buffs to Penny's super, which is absolutely phenomenal. She's definitely going to want to be somebody that you're going to want to prevent from charging her super as much as possible. Dodging her shots is going to be more crucial now than ever. Now, I do think she's still going to be a high skill brawler to try and learn, but once you do learn how to accurately aim with her and get her turret up quickly, she's definitely going to be such a strong brawler in Brawl Stars. Now, Penny is kind of an interesting brawler. She kind of counts as a gem carrier, and I don't think that she's going to be the obvious choice as far as being a gem carrier. I still think that Poco and Pam are going to hold that crown for this season of balances, but where she did well, I think she's going to do a little bit better. So maps where she's able to position her turret behind a wall that are really difficult for the enemy to really take out are going to be places where Penny is going to really thrive. If you're really good at aiming with Penny, she may even be a better option than Pam or Poco if the map caters to her. On top of that, I think that Penny might be vying for that third spot in Bounty along with Piper and Brock, especially with her turret's ability to displace enemy brawlers who take cover behind enemy walls. Now, she is really squishy and it is easy to take her out quickly, so you have to be excellent at dodging in order for her to be successful. But if you can do that, I think that she's a really solid option in Bounty. Okay guys, we talked about every single brawler individually and talked about how they are going to influence the meta. I even used my psychic abilities to look into the future and predict what is going to happen. I just wanted to give a quick recap of how the meta of Brawl Stars has kind of changed over the period of time. Okay, now about 4 months ago when Landscape first came up, I talked about survivability in Brawl Stars in one of my videos. At the time, we were being plagued by high DPS brawlers, which resulted in basically you getting taken out in a matter of seconds. It created a very punishing meta where it really didn't feel like you had any control over whether you were able to win a match. You could basically end in a loss and ask yourself, what could I have done differently to really win that match? And honestly, you really couldn't come up with an answer other than like, don't get in range. Because there were high damage brawlers like Rico, Colt, Dynamike, and Crow, who basically just took you out without you being able to do anything. Now, I brought this up as a problem that really needed to be addressed by Supercell, and I came up with 2 solutions to the problem, okay? Either Supercell needed to give overall health buffs to nearly every brawler in the game, thus increasing survivability, or they needed to really heavily nerf brawlers that had an extremely high DPS, thus making the game feel a little bit less punishing. Since that time, every single balance change that Supercell has put out for Brawl Stars has consistently progressed towards nerfing high DPS brawlers so that survivability is really great. At this point, I think that the game is finally at a point where the meta is relatively stable, just like the meta was in Brawl Stars before Landscape came out. I still don't think that the game is perfectly balanced to the point where every brawler is usable at a competitive level. Looking at you, Primo. But I still think that it is in a great spot, and I really want to give props to Supercell for taking the time to listen to our feedback and to rebalance the game to be as amazing as it was before Landscape, if not even better. Anyways guys, I hope you enjoyed this video. Let me know what you thought about it. I am genuinely interested in knowing what you thought about receiving balance changes, update recaps after they happened as opposed to like right when it happened. So please drop a line in the comment section below. This was a lot more in-depth than I've done in the past, so I appreciate your feedback. For now, this is KairosTime ticking by, and we will see you in Brawl Stars.